So when the minor prophets talk about the Gentile nations offering up a pure sacrifice and incense to the God of Israel, and when Isaiah talks about Gentile priests, who is that? It's in your face. It's staring you in the face, all of this stuff.
Greetings. Was I at it?
Yeah, man, what's up?
Greetings. I hadn't been listening the full time. I was hoping to catch it earlier, but I kind of wanted to introduce something. I'm not sure if it was introduced within the context of the topic.
Okay.
On the etc. version. I think all of these Catholic, Protestant, outside of atheist, Muslim, etc. Most of these etceteras, they seem to all come from an initial source.
Etceteras. What are you talking about?
Well, things other than those listed, right? There's lots of different branches of Orthodoxy, hundreds of Protestants. There's different branches, and etc. is just.
There's not a lot of branches of Orthodoxy, so I don't know what you mean.
Well, there's Coptic, there's Greek, there are several.
Those aren't branches of Orthodoxy. Greeks are in communion with the rest of the Orthodox. Coptics aren't.
Touche. What I thought to introduce was the idea that perhaps Jesus was actually authentically Jewish, like all of his followers, and he was.
Yeah, we believe that. So what about it?
Well, why is it that he wouldn't teach his followers to have the religion of him rather than a religion about him that was founded long after his
I mean, have you read the Gospels? He says, for example, in Luke 24, that all the stuff in Moses and the prophets and the Psalms is about him.
I concur. I would concur with that. I don't.
Well, that contradicts what you just said. So how could you concur with that?
I concur that it is about him. That doesn't. That
you just said it's not about him.
That means that the
You just said it's not about him.
No, a religion that is the religion he had, the Judaism that he had was.
He just said that Judaism is about him.
It is, and I agree.
You just said that that's not true.
Christianity.
You just said that's not true. What are you talking about?
I may have misspoken in my haste. What I'm trying to express is the difference between his religion and a religion that was formed posthumously.
Yeah, that's false. Yeah, that didn't happen. It's not true.
Well, why is it that all of his followers continue to observe Jewish customs?
I mean, in the book of Acts, this is explained by Acts 15.
Well, what's explained is actually they're talking about certain prohibitions that were against the Torah, against the law, which he
they weren't.
Condemned.
Acts 15 says that we should not require anything more than what Noah had to do in the Noahic covenant, and so the reasoning of Acts 15 is based on Noah.
Well, yes, the Jerusalem Council. But what he said was then they should go and learn, and you'll find the 4 things that are required. 3 of them are dietary, firstly, and then there's sexual immorality. What we're noticing is this is the requirement. It doesn't say this is all that one needs to do.
Yeah, we would agree. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about because we don't say that you only have to follow 4 things from the Noahic covenant to be in the church.
The Jerusalem Council that you're mentioning was brought to James, and James declared there were 4 things which a man must do.
I just agreed with that. I know, and there's more. I know.
On the Sabbath day, right? So that was. It wasn't.
Have you read the book of? Okay. Have you read the book of Hebrews?
I have.
Okay. What does it say?
It says a lot of things. What in particular?
What does it say about what we're talking about?
Well, are you speaking about faith and works? It says faith without works.
No, about all of the Judaic stuff that you want to include, which is what Acts 15 is really about, which is that Gentiles don't have to become Jews to be saved.
I would concur with that, but it does. Acts 15 does seem to state that they must attend. It actually says synagogue on Shabbat, doesn't it? But the point is that they're to go and learn the Torah.
Okay, hold on. So what you don't understand is that what's happening in Acts is part of a transitionary period. So what the book of Hebrews in part is talking about is 70 AD, which is the destruction of the temple. Jesus talked about this in Luke 21 and Matthew 24, that when you see the temple destroyed, that's the sign that the fullness of the old covenant. Let me finish. All right, I'm gonna. If you don't stop interrupting me, I'm gonna boot you. The old covenant is done when the temple is destroyed in 70 AD. That's what Luke 21 is talking about. So yes, there are things that happen in the middle of the book of Acts where there's still temples and synagogues before Christianity has been booted from the synagogue. And so that's the point you're missing, is that the new covenant is finally there and realized by 70 AD. That's the point.
I fully agree with you in that. I believe the kingdom was established at that point, fully. But I don't see how that negates the responsibility to learn the Torah, even outside of the synagogue. It seems that observing.
I don't know. Like we read this, every day in the church. So I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the Torah is more than just reading. It's about observing the commandments. There's 613 of them. We should strive to keep each of those that apply to us.
Yeah, again, you don't even understand that the Jewish law itself was never intended for the nations. It's intended for the Jewish people. So when the Messiah comes, the Messiah decides and his church decides what elements are necessary for the Gentiles. So no, we don't keep all of the laws that can't even be kept. It doesn't even make sense to keep them. When half of those laws apply to the land of Israel, which can't be kept by Gentiles. It makes no sense. It's not even the Jewish intention of the law.
Precisely, which is why I prefaced my statement with the laws which apply to us individually, because there are laws.
You just said 613 of them. 613 laws don't apply to Gentiles. I
agree. But of those 613, many do. And to be entered into covenant, there are still more.
Right. All of this is missing the point. All of this is missing the point that whatever you're talking about is not Orthodox Christianity. That's the only church that exists. So let's just cut to the chase. Like, what group are you a part of?
Well, I'm Jewish, firstly.
Okay.
I'm a Jew, and I have accepted that Yeshua has in effect fulfilled those prophecies. But you have to understand what they mean. And the thing about Gentile understanding is it's not. Things aren't translated very well for the nation.
Okay, so hold on. So in Isaiah 49 and 50, it says that when the Messiah comes, nations will begin to convert. Kings and queens will worship the Jewish Messiah. Do you think that happened in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th century?
I do. Absolutely.
Okay. And how were those people worshiping?
Mostly in secret.
No. Totally not true.
Mostly in secret.
No idea what you're talking about. So you think that in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th century that the church was worshiping in secret?
I believe that Rome was persecuting the
you don't know what you're talking about. Do you think we can read those people? Do you think we can go read those people and their beliefs?
Well, considering that Rome burnt most of the books, so we have fragments.
No idea what you're talking about. Rome burning the books. What are you talking about?
History, which Shlomo Pines gives us a lot.
Can you read what the Christians of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century taught and believed?
Yeah, some. I mean, we
like who?
Can read.
Like who?
Well, for example, we have the homilies
of who?
Right? Homilies of Clement.
Okay, that's one church father. Who else?
Have you read them? Have you read the homilies, for example?
I've read Clement. Yeah. Have you read any of these people?
I have very well. I mean,
so you've read. Wait a minute. You've read them very well. Okay. Who else?
You've heard the discussion between Simon Magus and Peter within Clement, right?
Well, we don't believe Clement is a saint. He's not accepted in our church. He's relevant as a historical figure. But I'm talking about the church fathers of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century and what they believed. Have you read any of them?
I have as an exercise of pure, just for liturgy, just to understand. I don't follow or believe any of that. Like as I said, I'm a Jew.
Well, hold on. So, but the point I'm making is that we can figure out what the Christians of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th century believe by going and reading these people, and it shows that you're not even letting me finish. It shows that they are doing and fulfilling the types of things predicted, for example, in Isaiah 49 and 50, where we're told that Gentile kings will become priests and worship the Jewish Messiah. So that happens in those centuries. We can go read those people, and they believe what Orthodox Christians today believe.
Somewhat.
Well, but you haven't read them, so how do you know they don't?
Well, I I have read some of them.
Like who?
Like who? I mentioned Jerome. I mentioned Clement.
Well, hold on, Jerome. What does Jerome believe?
Well, Jerome doesn't actually believe what I believe, but Jerome records the Nazarenes carrying the original Matthew in Hebrew. Like, he records that the original Nazarenes observed the Sabbath and followed the law of Moses, and like, there is record of this group of people that existed prior to Christians. There was even a debate of whether the word Christian should be used or Cressian.
Okay.
Which is the
So when the minor prophets talk about the Gentile nations offering up a pure sacrifice and incense to the God of Israel, and when Isaiah talks about Gentile priests, who is that? It's in your face. It's staring you in the face, all of this stuff.
They're talking about converts, clearly, but we were talking about the first 3 century church.
Correct.
Right?
That's them.
No, that's Isaiah. You were talking about Isaiah prophesying. I hear you.
Are you being sophist? You know what I'm saying here.
You're neglecting the actual fathers that you chose to bring up. Like,
I'm neglecting them. No, you haven't read them. That's the point. Those are the Gentile priests that fulfill these prophecies, that offer the sacrifice of the Eucharist. That's them.
It just seems like you're avoiding.
I'm not avoiding anything.
I mentioned Jerome. I heard
you said as a Gentile. You said I don't understand the text. I'm right here in Isaiah 49 and 50, where it prophesies Gentile priests. It prophesies that's the end of Isaiah 65 or 66.
I hear you, and I would say that we see that with Paul going out and start preaching to the Gentiles.
Exactly.
I have no.
And guess what? So after that period, when Jesus says in Matthew 16 that the gates of hell would not prevail against the church, it's that group that has the extension of that gift of Pentecost that goes out and anoints Gentiles to be part of that covenant. So the church that exists in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century is the same group from Pentecost. There's not a false...
That was overcome by Marcus, but this was not acceptable. The authentic...
Overcome by Marcus? I don't know what you're talking about. What are you even talking about?
I'm talking about when the authentic Nazarenes,
you're wrong. That's not the church. I'm showing you how there's no authentic Nazarene sect. I'm showing you that the Gentile kings and queens that are prophesied in Isaiah 49 and 50, they're not Nazarenes. They're the people in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th century that convert the Roman Empire and the other nations to worship the God of Israel.
So we're just going to avoid that. That is the organization of Constantine that brought the ecumenical Rome.
It's all bullshit. What you believe is bullshit. There is no changed church of Constantine. That's why when you read the church fathers of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd century, they teach the same thing as the church fathers after Constantine. But you haven't read them, and you've evidenced that in your discussion that you haven't read them, because you would know that they don't teach anything different.
I mean, they absolutely do.
No, they don't. Because how would you know if you haven't read them? How would you know if you haven't read them?
Still debating over the.
How would you know if you said? I can tell you haven't read them. So how would you know they changed the doctrine after Constantine?
Because they were still debating over the Trinity at this point.
Having a debate does not prove that the doctrine's changed.
They didn't have a doctrine. There wasn't.
Oh, wait a minute. So you think the post-apostolic fathers don't teach the Trinity?
I know that it took a while for them to get there, because initially
I've done an entire lecture. I've done an entire lecture with Inspiring Philosophy on the post-apostolic fathers teaching the Trinity.
I'm sure to review that. I follow you, Jay. I really appreciate all of your insights.
You should go watch the Inspiring Philosophy talk, where we rebut the Muslim argument that the church fathers of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century don't teach the Trinity. We did a whole 2-hour talk on just 1st and 2nd century fathers on the Trinity. So they teach the deity of Christ, they teach the personhood of the Holy Spirit and his deity. It's all before Constantine. There's no new Christianity that Constantine invented. It's not true.
Well, I agree. We have Simon Magus in the 1st century here in Clement's writings arguing against Peter with that very same thing. But you find Peter stands upon monotheism purely because there is one God.
So monotheism, this is wrong. This is wrong. If you look up what monarchical Trinitarianism is, because if you look at this video I did where the introductory debate with Daniel Hukikicho, I proved from modern Jewish scholarship that there's no such thing as a generic Unitarian monotheism. Modern Jewish scholars are more and more admitting, hey, it actually looks like there's a triad in the Old Testament.
I mean, that that just sounds like Reconstructionist. I don't think that you're going to find
the rabbis that I cite here are not all Reformed or Reconstructionist Jews. So we're talking about multiple different scholars, and you can just go read them. It's Boyarin, it's Summers, it's Siegel. They're all talking about how it's clearly the case that in multiple texts, it's not just Unitarian. Who's this manifestation throughout the Old Testament prophets? It's Jesus.
I mean, first off, I'm not. All right, because for the debate, I will. There is the idea of the memra. All right, there's Jewish concepts that do not equate to deity. That the personifications, analogies, comparisons.
Can you?
These things are standard euphemisms.
The problem is that when these Theophanies appear, they're called Yahweh and they're worshipped. So how is it worshipped? And by the way, if you believe the New Testament,
David was worshipped. The word means bow. This is just a Trinity.
No. You can't. God says, "I don't give my name to it. I don't give my name to another." And yet in Exodus, we're told that the name of Yahweh. You're not even letting me finish. The name of Yahweh is in the angel that goes before him in Exodus 23. So how can
King Jehu held his name?
That's not saying that the name of Yahweh is in the angel of the Lord, and he's called the Redeemer.
You're taking a euphemism and turning it into something literal.
So you don't believe in the so you're an anti-Trinitarian. So that's the point. You're anti-Trinitarian, even though multiple times the Messiah is given the name Yahweh, right?
No.
So Jesus is not called Yahweh.
Never.
Okay. What does Hebrews 1 say, citing the Psalms about the Son of God?
Just quote it for me.
You said, well, hold on. You said Hebrews says a lot of things.
It does. I haven't memorized the entire thing. You have a verse in mind. You should mention it to me.
The totality of Hebrews 1 is about the superiority of the Son of God, the eternal Son of God, to the angels, because he created all the angels. Are you familiar with this or not?
I am familiar with this interpretation.
No, it's not an interpretation. It's multiple texts that are cited from the Psalms. God, who at various times and in various ways spoke to us in past by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us via his Son, whom he anointed the heir of all things, through whom he made the worlds. So God created the world through his Son, okay? That means that he's not a Nazarene Aryan creation. He's the second person of the Godhead, who, being the brightness of his glory, being created through.
Through. The word is through. If it had said created for.
You don't even know what is in Hebrews 1, which is a passage about defending the deity of Christ, and you're here trying to argue with me over the word through.
You will see the Aramaic word there is the same.
It's not the Aramaic word. Listen, the whole force of the passage is that Jesus is the creator of the world, as John 1 says. It's playing on what...
The world was created for him, not by him.
You haven't even read John 1. John, in the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, and the world was created through him. All things that came to be were created by him and for him, and nothing came to be that he didn't create, is what the passage is saying. It goes on to say,
the word. This is the Hebrew concept of memra, and you can check.
No, it's not. No,
MEMRA.
No, that's what you have to say to have your heresy, to get away from the fact that the entirety of Hebrews 1 says that the Son of God created the angels. He's superior to the angels. You don't think that's the force of that passage? That's the point of it?
No, it was that everything was created for him, not by him, not with his hands, but with.
That's not. No, that's the opposite of what the passage says. He is the creator of the world. That's what John 1 says. And that's why the whole argument is that he's not like an angel because he created the angels. That's the whole argument of Hebrews 1.
I mean, it just seems that to me seems like heresy, honestly. The idea that there could be another God. When Jesus was...
It's not another God because you don't understand that the word God itself...
He recited the Shema. Do you realize the context? When he was asked the first commandment by another rabbi, he recited the Shema.
Have you read the book of John? Have you read the book of John?
It's the first commandment.
Have you read the book of John?
Yes.
Okay. Every chapter of the book of John includes either or both an argument for his full deity or for the Trinity. In fact, in multiple cases, he says that he's equal to the Father. He does the same works as the Father.
Everything you're... you see, this is so sad.
So, right.
Can I bring up one verse?
No, we're done. Because all of this is about the basics of the deity of Christ, which you can't stomach because you don't want to believe it. And we're going to go through Hebrews. For the sake of the audience, so that you see my point here. God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in times past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he made the worlds, and being the brightness of his glory. So God's glory cannot be likened to creatures. The Son is the brightness of his glory. And whom he has appointed the heir of all things, the express image of his hypostasis of his person. You can't make images of God, and yet this says that the Son is the direct icon of the Father. When he purged him, when he had by himself purged our sins, sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high. That's the ascension. Having become much more excellent than the angels through the incarnation and ascension. For which of the angels did God ever say, "You are my Son, today I have begotten you"? This is Hebrews arguing that the Father spoken to the Son about the eternal generation of the Son. I will be his Father, he will be my Son. But when he brings the firstborn into the world, that is, into the created order, he says, let the angels worship the Son. You can't worship creatures. And this is not talking about reverencing a king, it's talking about worship. The whole point of the passage is that he's superior to the angels. Of the angels, he says, he creates, he makes his angel spirits and his ministers a flame of fire. But to the Son, he says, your throne, O God. The Son is God. Your throne, O God, Son, God, is forever. Therefore, God, your God, has anointed you. That's the Father and that's the Son. Now, you were getting hung up on the word God. Go listen to all the talks, the debates that we've done with the Muslims, where we get into the point that the word God can pick out different things. It doesn't just refer to the divine essence. It doesn't just refer to a Unitarian deity. It can pick out in Scripture all kinds of things. It can pick out angels. It can pick out men. It can pick out demons. It can pick out the Father. It can pick out his angel. It can pick out his spirit. It can pick out the divine essence or the divine operations. God is a generic term that means it can pick out different things. And so all these arguments always hinge on, well, there's only one God, so therefore there's no differentiations in God. And yet, when we drill into this, we always find out there's multiple passages that point out there are differentiations in God. And that's because the word God can pick out monotheos, monarchical theism, the person of the Father. If God's an eternal Father, how is he eternally the Father without an eternal Son? This is Alexander's argument. That's prior to Nicaea, by the way. St. Alexander's argument about the Trinity is prior to Nicaea. And if you go and read the church fathers that I mentioned, which you obviously haven't read, you would know that they all teach the exact same things that I'm talking about. And this is about the Son. You laid the foundations of the earth. To which of the angels did he ever say, sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool? And then John 1, in the beginning was the Word, the Logos, the second person of the Godhead, Jesus. The Word was with God and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. So now, does this not immediately refute this anti-Trinitarian Nazarene error? All things were made through him, and without him was nothing that was made. So there's no things that came to be that he didn't make. It's very obvious what this passage is saying. And he kept saying, no, it's made through. It doesn't matter. Yeah, of course it is made through. That doesn't mean he's the world or he's created. Because the passage clearly says anything that came to be was made by him. He is the creator. And that's why he's the one in the Garden of Eden walking around with Adam and Eve. Because he says in John to the Pharisees, no one has seen the Father at any time. There is no image of the Father except the Son, as Hebrews 1 says. So when he argues with the Pharisees, he enrages them because he says that he's equal to the Father. He is the image and brightness and glory of the Father. That's what Ezekiel 1-10 says. He is the Son of Man on the chariot, the eternal Son of God. I don't know why this is being so slow. Why is this not pulling up Ezekiel 1? Now notice that every passage that dealt with the deity of the Son or the angel of the Lord, he said, oh, that's symbolic. Those are just passages that symbolically refer to Yahweh. Yet, when Jesus comes onto the scene in the Gospels and argues his position, he's always arguing that those things are him, that he's the one that ate with Abraham. Does that mean, how could he be the one with Abraham if those are all just symbolic passages that don't refer to a second hypostasis in the Godhead? So in other words, Jesus was wrong or was lying in all those passages in John where he says that he's the one that visited Moses. Who do you think Moses went and ate with? Oh, it's just symbolic. It's just symbolic. Well, then Jesus is wrong for identifying himself as the one who was with Moses face to face. Paul says in 2 Corinthians that it was Moses that was meeting with Jesus face to face. So all of these passages are then wrong. And we just saw that the Messiah, when he comes in Isaiah, is worshipped by the nations. And that guy said, no, that's just reverencing. That's just reverencing. You can't give creatures the attributes of deity. That's what idolatry is. That's why when it says that the angel of the Lord appears, not only is he called Yahweh and worshipped, when he appears to Samson and Manoah, to Samson's parent, to Manoah, it says that, why do you ask my name, seeing as it is wonderful? That's the same message in Isaiah when the Son of God is called, whose name is wonderful, in the Messianic passages in Isaiah. So that guy was just sort of infected with this Gnostic idea of whatever Nazarene stuff is. So if you look at Judges, by the way, in Judges also, it says Yahweh turned his face to Gideon. That's because it's Jesus that's there talking to Gideon. Because Jesus is the face of Yahweh. Why do you see my name, why do you ask my name, seeing as it is wonderful? And then Isaiah 9, 5-6. Isaiah 9, 6 and 7 as well. We call his name wonderful. It's the same personage that appeared to Samson's parents. It's the same messenger of the covenant that appears to Gideon and turns his face to Gideon. Remember, no one sees the Father at any time. Then who is it that's talking to Gideon that appears to him? Yahweh turned his face to Gideon. By the way, that whole chapter has the triad present. Yahweh is mentioned. Yahweh's messenger who turns his face to Gideon, and the spirit that comes upon Gideon.